Good morning. It's about 7:30 Sunday morning. I'm sitting here in Syracuse, Nebraska. I saw a story from the UK that there's a bill going through Parliament. Uh, anyway, the UK government, to break it down, wants children to spy on their parents for a whole multitude of reasons. Some of it is COVID related. I've already heard that there's a bill in Scotland to have children spy on their parents in case there may be hate speech in the home. You know, your mother or father may say something Islamophobic or transphobic or whatever phobic we're not supposed to talk about today. It seems like the UK and the United States are both rushing towards Orwellianism as fast as possible. One's trying to beat the other one. We see, the old bigot that's now president here in the U.S. He signed something like 40 executive orders in his first week. John Kerry, who's part of his crew, and Biden himself both said, "Hey, we want to eliminate some certain jobs, so we'll just train you to do something else." Oh, well, that's wonderful. So now it's up to the government what job I take and what job I can't have, and you're going to retrain me just like that. Doesn't matter if that job pays less. It's none of your. Of course, John Kerry doesn't care because he's a millionaire several times over. Joe Biden doesn't care. He's got a lot of money thanks to his dealings with China. And then he sits there and talks about, green energy, and we're going to get off fossil fuels by 2035, which isn't going to happen, by the way. But it's really funny because his son, Hunter Biden, remember, works for a foreign oil company overseas. Remember that? Oil company. Or energy company, oil and gas. John Kerry is, if I'm not mistaken, is the guy who prevented them from building a wind farm around his house, near his home, near his mansion. So, they're such hypocrites. And then, now with Biden in office, right? There's, oh, well, the adults are running things again. Like we're children. See, you're a child to these people. And we need adults to run our lives. No, you're not supposed to. I don't need you to run anything. You know what I need you to do? The 18 enumerated powers given to the federal government in the Constitution. And one of them is not telling me which job I should have. You shouldn't even be involved in employment. You shouldn't be involved in education. You shouldn't be involved in a lot of things you're involved in. Everybody's getting upset about Joe Biden signing these bills about, transgender people in school, in the bathrooms, and this and that. They shouldn't even have any power over that. And that's my whole point. That's like, oh, we're worried Joe Biden's going to take our guns. The federal government has no power to take your guns, or they shouldn't. The only reason why the federal government has power to take your guns is because you gave them that power when you incorporated the Constitution. And the NRA is one of the biggest they've done more to take away your gun rights. And you say, well, what are you talking about? Because they have incorporated the Constitution. In other words, they have fought for the federal government to pass a universal concealed carry law. Now you may think, well, that's a good thing. No, it's not, because when they do that, what they're saying is the federal government has that power. The federal government doesn't have that power. They shouldn't have that power. The Second Amendment says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed from the federal government. The Constitution is a federal document. Okay? It's a federal document. It's things the federal government cannot do to you. So now you're going to say, well, that means that the states can take away your gun rights. True. But the state government is much more local. I live in Texas. You know, if Joe Biden tomorrow said, well, we're going to ban assault weapons, then the governor of Texas should say, the only authority you have to ban assault weapons is in D.C. You don't have the authority to ban assault weapons in Texas, so go pound sand. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way our founders meant it to be. But we have given up so many rights to the Constitution or to the federal government, and a lot of people did it with good intentions, thinking that it was going to help, and it hasn't helped, and it's not going to help. You know, the Department of Education. Let me tell you something. A true constitutionalist, if a true constitutionalist right now should be saying in the federal government, be they in Congress, or as a president or whoever, should say the Department of Education should not exist. Therefore, if you're in Congress, you should vote against any confirmation of anyone who is being considered for the Department of Education. I don't care if you think that they're a good person, because the Department of Education should not exist on a federal level. There is no place in the Constitution that gives a federal government any sort of authority over education. So the Department of Education should not even exist. It's unconstitutional. But there are a lot of conservatives out there who fall into this trap. Oh, well, you know, we need to try to get this person in the Department of Education. They'll make things better. No, what you should be saying is there should be no Department of Education. Then it doesn't matter if Michelle Obama wants to change school lunches. She doesn't have that. Well, she doesn't have that authority anyways. The First Lady is not an office. There's no office of the First Lady. She wasn't elected to anything. But even if she were, somehow in the federal government, she should not have that authority. The Department of Education, like I said, should not exist on a federal level. That should be local, at least at the state level. I argue that it should be even a smaller. It should be at the local school district level, but at least at the state level, not at the federal level. And that's the problem. We have ceded these things to the federal government. You know, when the NRA says, well, the federal government should force, states that won't let you conceal carry into conceal carry. No, they shouldn't. We say, well, aren't you pro-gun? Yes, I'm pro-gun. But when you give the federal government the power to do that, you're also giving the federal government the power to take that right away from you. I'll give you an example. I remember years ago when I was a kid, there was a story about some Satan worshipers that were caught somewhere in the woods. We were living in East Texas. They found a dead goat or something, and they thought, the Satanists were worshiping, sacrificing a goat or something like that. Anyway, I just remember saying something to my dad about, I said, they ought to outlaw Satanism. Just outlaw it. And my dad said, you don't want them to outlaw Satanism. I was shocked. I'm like, why don't I want them to outlaw Satanism? He said, because if they can outlaw Satanism today, then they can outlaw Christianity tomorrow. And that always stuck with me. And it's the same thing when you want the federal government to give you a right. The federal government can't give you a right, because the federal government, you don't get your rights from the federal government. You get your rights from God or from nature, whatever you want to call it. In other words, they're inalienable. They're inherited. You inherit those rights simply by being an American. Those rights are not given to you by man. But when you ask the federal government, hey, federal government, can you force California into having better gun laws? The federal government, sure, no problem. Why? Because at that moment, you just gave the federal government power over your gun rights. You gave the federal government power over the Second Amendment. And that's what we've done. We've done it with education. We've done it with religion. We've done it with education. How we've done it with religion? The whole, church is not paying property taxes. Now, there again, people, that's a great idea. It's wonderful. What are you, against that? What are you, an atheist or something? No. But they beat churches over the head with that, because they tell them, oh, well, you're not paying taxes. That means no political speech. Now, we all know that the leftist socialist preachers out there can can preach politics from the pulpit, and the federal government doesn't do squat to them for it. We know that. We all know it. But you hamstring other preachers. And now we've got the government in Canada, and it's starting to trickle down here, telling preachers, hey, you could be arrested if you speak out against homosexuality. You say homosexuality is a sin, we consider that a hate crime. Buddy, you can go to prison for that. Don't think that won't trickle down to here, because it will. People are already talking about it now. Why? Because you've given the government power over the First Amendment. The First Amendment says Congress shall not restrict these things. Congress, in other words, the federal government, not the state, not local government, the federal government shall not touch these things. Now, you may say, well, that means that your local state could enact laws against your free speech. Yes, that means it's your responsibility to keep your state government in check. You're not supposed to, look, being free does not mean you just sit on your backside and just expect the politicians to never infringe on your rights. To live in a free society means you should be constantly vigilant, fighting for that freedom, fighting against these politicians, because it's just natural for a government agency or for a government worker, for a politician in the government to want more and more power. And they even may be well-intentioned. You know, we had a lot of laws that came about because people were well-intentioned, but they were oppressive laws. You know, I look at prostitution right now and I think, how is that's, as long as they're two grown adults, I'm not talking about child prostitute, I'm talking about two adults. How is that the government's business? How is, if a woman comes up to me and says, hey, you know, I could use $20. I'm not giving you $20. Hey, I'll have sex with you. All right. That's prostitution. That's against the law. No, I'm not doing that. But I'm just saying. But that's technically against the law. Why? Well, for moral reasons. You cannot legislate morality. You can't do it. Okay? Even Jesus didn't go to the Roman government and say, hey, man, you need to outlaw prostitution because I don't think it's right. He didn't do that. He told the prostitute, go and sin no more. Right? That's a religious thing. That's a faith thing. Not even religious, because Jesus wasn't religious per se. He wasn't Baptist, Catholic, Methodist, whatever. That's not something for the government to do. He didn't advocate for the government to outlaw prostitution or adultery or any of these things. It's up to us as individuals. So anyway, that's my thought on the whole thing. I just really see us going down a bad road, and I don't see it getting any better anytime soon. So that's about it. Anyway, everyone have a good weekend.